And if we do an Ontario year and then a Canada year, we could do 3 years in a row. And that would give us something to do while we were stuck in Canada. They all look like Swainsons to me. We spent a lot of time because I was like, what the heck? You've got a gray-cheeked thrush and I don't. We're going to stay here till I see that gray-cheeked thrush. And we never did. It adds another element to a big year when you're doing it with a partner who isn't always on board to go to places. And we quickly got to the point where a couple of times I had to say to Jerry, you need to trust me. I'm the one that did all the research. And I say, we need to go for this bird. You can't question me on it because I know that we need to see that bird. We didn't do any overnighters. We made a deal at the beginning that we weren't going to drive anywhere through the night either. I would drive when I could, but Jerry isn't as literate on the phone as I am. So I would say, well, just check Discord and just see. I get frustrated and pull over anyway to look. So it kind of defeats the purpose a little bit. It was a really good moment for us because I really didn't think that I was going to do it.
But she did do it, along with her husband Jerry, back-to-back county and provincial big years here in Ontario. I'm Robert Baumander, and if you just stumbled on this broadcast accidentally, it's December 1st, 2025, and you're listening to the Big Year Podcast. This is our Season 3 finale. That's right, I've been blathering on now for nearly 3 years. When I began in January of 2023 with my Big Year birding mentor, Sandy Komito, I had no idea where this would lead. Actually, I'm not exactly sure where this has led me, other than to accomplish a desire since childhood to host my own talk show. Back then, I wanted to be the next Johnny Carson. I could have never imagined that I'd end up a bird nerd talking to other bird nerds about nerdy birding. And that is your alliteration segment for this podcast. And I could never have done it without this wonderful community of birders I've met over the years. I waited 51 years to finally find a group of people that I actually felt comfortable around. And that includes my family and work colleagues. There's an old line often attributed to Groucho Marx saying he would never join a club who would have someone like him as a member. I felt the same way for most of my life, but now I'm grateful to be a member of this club. November was another great month of chasing rarities here in southwestern Ontario. October ended up with a western cattle egret, gray kingbird, and little blue heron. No sooner had the calendar turned to November than a razorbill showed up near Tommy Thompson Park in eastern Toronto. Since it was a Sunday, I raced to Toronto and joined a very large group of excited birders to see this rare visitor from the East Coast. Next up were cave swallows. These birds, who breed in Texas, have a weird migration route that brings them over Lake Erie and Ontario before heading down south to Mexico. We don't see them every year, but they have been pretty dependable in the fall of late. I drove to Point Pelee National Park to see them this year and was joined by Jerry and Ellen Horak, who needed them for their ongoing Canada Big Year. In fact, Ellen will be joining me shortly. As soon as I can get through my obligatory monologue, I let Johnny Carson. A couple of weeks later, another dependable fall rarity showed up, a black-throated grey warbler. Easy to get on the west coast, but only 1 or 2 show up in Ontario each year, almost always in the Niagara region. This one was in Port Colborne, near the shores of Lake Erie. The last rarity of the month was a rufous hummingbird. Earlier in November, I had driven about 2 hours north of my home here in Brantford to see one coming to a backyard feeder, but was a day late and a tank of gas short, as there had been a snowstorm the night before, and the hummingbird either left or just didn't survive the night. Luckily for me, another one showed up closer to home near Hamilton, and the homeowner was gracious enough to grant birders a visitation with their female rufous hummingbird. As I mentioned last month, I had never been much of an Ontario lister each year and had never seen more than 285 species, that being in 2022. So, though I am by no means doing an Ontario Big Year, I have been chasing quite a bit, and with the rarities that have shown up this fall, I am at 296 in 2025. So I think it will be a busy December for me so I can hit at least 300 once in my life here in Ontario. A trip up to Algonquin Park later in the month might just get me there. I'll let you know next year. So without any further ado, or even dippity-doo, let's get on with the show and get to know one of my favorite Ontario birders, Ellen Horak, sans Jerry. I am here to welcome Ellen Horak and not Jerry Horak. Jerry is off doing other things. Ellen is a big year birder times 3. She has completed a Brant County big year in 2023, as I did when I moved to Brant County in 2021, and her goal was 200 species. In 2024, last year, she decided, let's go one further and do an Ontario big year and have a goal of 300. And of course, upcoming will be her Canada big year with a goal of 400. How did you decide to go about doing that?
It really started with a couple of things. In 2022, Jerry hit 200 in Brant County, and I ended the year at 199.
I've noticed that on your eBird reports that Jerry seems to always have this one extra bird.
Because I tend to stay at home. He'll say, I'm going out, and I'll say, I don't want to go out. So he got that one more bird. And so in my mind, because I'm super competitive, I wanted to get to at least 200. And then the other factor was that we knew that we were going to be caregiving for his mom. So we knew we wouldn't be able to travel. Till that time, we'd been traveling through much of North America, trying to up our North American list. So I came up with the idea, if we do a county list and if we do an Ontario year and then a Canada year, we could do 3 years in a row. And that would give us something to do while we were stuck in Canada.
Yes, and dealing with a lot of things that sometimes birding gives you a distraction from.
It absolutely did. It absolutely gave us that sense of being stress-free when we were out birding and being able to forget everything else.
For a lot of people, that is what birding has become, especially when COVID hit.
That's right.
So we're going to go backwards in time now. You and Jerry have been together how long?
We've been married 47 years this year. So we met, I was 17, he was 18. We got married when we were 20. We didn't bird in those years. I grew up with parents who knew birds and knew nature, but they were not listers. But whenever we were out, we birded. So I grew up knowing birds. When Jerry and I got together, we hiked a lot. And so he learned the birds, but we never started listing until 2013.
In 2012, listing was looked on sort of poorly by a lot of birders. I would tell people, oh, I'm here to get this particular bird. Oh, you're a lister.
Or a twitcher.
After the big year came out, the idea of listing has become just a normal thing. That's what birders do. They list.
That's right.
So you became a lister in 2013. What prompted it?
Believe it or not, it was the big year. In 2006, we moved from Burlington to Glenmorris. We built an eco-friendly home. And one of the reasons that we moved out there was because of the trails, the Grand River bike paths, and being closer to nature. But we found that we didn't spend a lot of time out in nature. We were gardening. There was so much to do with the house and getting things set up. So we had watched that movie before. So in December 2012, we rewatched The Big Year. And I just casually said to Jerry, you know what? Next year, we should make it a big year and we should see how many birds we can actually see in Ontario. He said, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. And that's how it started. And it became an instant passion for both of us. Probably more for me because like you, I love lists. I love things organized and neat. I'm competitive. So it really appealed to me. So we went out and started listing. We joined Hamilton Naturalists, Ontario Ornithologists, took as many hikes, went out there to learn as much as we could.
We can do something that's totally fun, although when people see us, they don't think we're having fun when we're staring into bushes.
Minus 30.
Saying, is it there? Is there? I see it. I think I see it. Oh, wait, it's up the trail. And then everybody runs up the trail. And then everyone runs back down the trail. Right. And there's a scene in The Big Year where they're in Alaska and someone's saying, the bird is here, the bird is there. And people are switching directions. And I thought, that just seems silly. But I've been there. I know what it looks like when a bird flies 30 meters further than where everybody else is. And that one person who is just wandering on their own says, I've got it.
Yeah.
By the way, what did you guys do as careers?
Jerry spent 35 years at Bell Canada. And I did a lot of different things. I have a degree in business, so I worked in the packaging industry for a few years. But once we decided to have kids, I stayed at home. But my stay at home was we had rental property, so I was a landlord and I did some home businesses. And then I decided to homeschool my kids. And then I tutored children that had difficulty in school. And then after my kids left, I got my degree as an educational assistant.
That sort of thing plays into the fact that now you lead bird hikes.
We do, yes. And we've just started in the last few years. And this year we'll be doing some hikes at Peely.
So let's start with the Brant County Big Year. What was your goal? Did you have a bit of a plan?
For Brant County, I didn't have too much of a plan going in because small area, we had already birded Brant County many years, so we had an idea. Generally, if you're birding in Brant County, you just follow where Bill Lamond is.
Yes, I discovered that when I started birding here.
Bill's out every day birding and he knows all the spots. We spent a lot of time hitting the spots where he had been or where we knew that he would be. We kind of had an idea where to get the common birds and then chase whatever anybody put onto Discord. I wasn't going full out. I wasn't intending on trying to best Bill because he's really unbeatable.
Yeah, and even in my Brant County big year, I was out pretty much every single day and I got within 3 of him, and that was hard to do. That year was good because there was the evening grosbeaks and we had this influx of redpolls, and at the time you had to find one hoary redpoll in the hundreds of common redpolls. They're just redpolls now.
No, they're just redpolls.
Then that's an interesting thing about doing a big year. We all play by ABA rules as opposed to eBird rules.
Right.
And if you see a bird like hoary redpoll before it's been changed by the ABA and changed on eBird,
right, you keep it on the list. And that's what happened to us in Ontario last year. The hoary got taken off of eBird, but we saw it in January. It got taken off in November. So I still count hoary redpoll as a bird from last year.
That's one of the issues about keeping your own list so that you can remember that, yes, I did see these 2 birds that were lumped.
It was one of the reasons why I decided to do blogs, is so that I have my lists there and can go back and remember. We had to chase a few things, but we hit the 200 in September. It ended up that Jason and Bill tied for first place in Brant County.
For people who don't know where we are in Brant County, we are on the Grand River.
Right.
And the Grand River seems to attract a lot of gulls. And along that stretch that we call Scarf Avenue, we've had a number of rare gulls. We had California gull, but for your Brant County year, which ones did you get?
There was Franklin's for sure. We normally hit around 250, I think, species-wise. We'd only hit 210 and 209, and Jerry had one more bird than I did, which had happened the year before when he had the 200 and I had 199.
Is there a little bit of jealousy?
No, because in the Brant County year, what happened was I was standing right beside him. So we had just gotten our 200th species, which was a blue-headed vireo. And then we were at Brant Park. He was ahead of me and he got his bins up on some thrush and he said, there's a gray-cheeked thrush. So I got my bins up and I looked and there was 3 or 4 birds. I went through all of them. There was one that was kind of in shadows. I couldn't really tell, but they all looked like Swainsons to me. We spent a lot of time because I was like, what the heck? You've got a gray-cheeked thrush and I don't. We're going to stay here till I see that gray-cheeked thrush. And we never did. Jerry was absolutely confident that he saw a gray-cheeked thrush. He put a gray-cheeked thrush down. I could easily have just put a gray-cheeked thrush down. But I also really, really want a good reputation as a bird.
Yes.
And I want to be ethical. And so I legitimately did not see a bird that was a gray-cheeked thrush. And so I didn't put it on.
And so now that you've completed this Brant County big year,
it was kind of the test, to be honest, just like what would a big year be like?
at the end of that, how did you feel about now we're going to do Ontario? Because you had this 3-year plan already. Knowing what it's like just to race around, even just Brant County, we have to do this, but over thousands of kilometers for the same 365 days.
Yeah, I was excited to do it actually, because I found that Brant County probably wasn't enough. Like you were saying, there was a lot of downtime where you're not really looking for birds. And I probably had started in the summer putting lists together because for Ontario, you absolutely had to know where you were going and what you were doing. We haven't birded Ontario a lot. I mean, we've been to a lot of places, but not everywhere. So I had Excel sheets listed of birds, where to go, when to see them. I had documents of 100 birds to chase Ontario. I had a calendar so that I had by week as where I should be birding and what I should be seeing.
I put a big calendar
on the wall.
On the wall downstairs. Nice. I had it all marked out where I was going specifically, but then also knowing that if something shows up, I have to get on a plane. Sue was frustrated because I had just got back from British Columbia and less than 48 hours later, I got an email from the Whale Center, which is the best place to go in Tofino to get things like puffins and whatever. And she said, we're going out tomorrow. And I said, I have to go to British Columbia. And she said, you just got back from British Columbia. And I said, yes, but I told them to call me if they were going out for this bird, and they called me, so I can't not go.
You flew back.
I flew back.
Crazy.
Sue thought that was crazy too.
Ontario didn't have that happen. In Ontario, at least, we knew that we were going to be driving. It was interesting in Ontario, though, because a few times people said to us, well, why don't you just fly up to Thunder Bay? And both Jerry and I kind of looked at each other like that just never occurred to us that we would be getting on a plane in Ontario after a bird. So it didn't happen. And indeed, we didn't go for a few northern birds because the drive was too long.
Well, during the 2022 Ontario big year for that large group of birders, including Ezra, they did one flight. They flew to Winnipeg so they could get birds in northern Ontario and not have to do that 18-hour drive.
Right.
And that's one of the things about Ontario. Ontario is like birding in Texas. And you want to get from one side of the state to the other. It's a very long drive.
Yeah. Our background, too, is living sustainably. We live in a solar-powered home. I used to do talks about people living sustainable lives. Birding can be sustainable, but doing a big year is not, and it's not eco-friendly. And so I had to put that together with the idea that I wanted to get as many birds, but I also wanted to do it as sustainably as I could. It helps that we drive a Prius that's a plug-in, so a lot of our local birding is electric. So
yes.
it makes me feel a teeny little bit better.
There are places in your Ontario big year that you just couldn't go to, I'm assuming.
Absolutely, for sure. I mean, and our car isn't fully electric. It's just plug-in. They're a little bit of electric. So we have the hybrid, which you have to have. And in our trip up north, when we went for the ptarmigan, we rented a four-wheel drive to go up because we didn't feel comfortable. We probably would have been okay in our car because that winter, there really wasn't a lot of snow. Or we were driving on bare roads most of the time. But I didn't know for sure that that would happen or not.
So you get to December 31st and you're finishing your Grand County big year. How did you plan to start January 1st for Ontario?
What my plan was for Ontario was rarities first and no chasing common species at all. Western Tanager was in Ottawa in December, and so we started our Ontario year in Ottawa. And I had this vision in my head that we were going to get the Tanager in Ottawa. We were going to drive down and get a Townsend Solitaire that was at Sandbanks, I think. And then we were going to stop and get a Barrow's Goldeneye. And I think I had me getting like 4 or 5 rarities the first day. You probably know that that did not happen. So we were up at the crack of dawn and we were at the Western Tanager spot as soon as it got light. And we stood there. It was -10. It was very cold. We were so excited, we didn't even put a granola bar in our pockets. And of course, the Western Tanager didn't show up. And if I had really paid attention to the reports, I would have seen that it often didn't show up until 11 or so later in the day. So we stood there for a couple of hours, and then I was getting really antsy about, oh my gosh, we're supposed to be going to here and here, and we haven't done any of that. And so after a few hours, we sadly gave up and we left. And then we didn't get the Townsend either. And by that time, we ended up getting to Whitby, and it was like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and we had no rarity. We'd only seen about 5 or 10 birds maybe. And we ran down the beach looking through the fading light, and we got the Barrow's Goldeneye. That was our first rarity of the day. So I was a little bit crushed, but probably needed that. Just like, okay, this is not going to go the way that you expect it to. And we pulled ourselves together and got out the next day and continued on. But I was concentrating on rarities, chasing rarities, and picking up all the common species as we went.
It's always rarities first.
Right.
And when you're on your way to a rarity, never pull over to check a bird on a wire.
Jerry and I, that's one of our arguments usually, because Jerry is the kind of birder who will stop for every bird that he sees. He always has the idea that every bird is a potential rarity. And so he will want to stop. And I am very much like, the rarity is there. We're not stopping for anything until we get the rarity. Then we can look at all the other birds. Whereas he will be like, no, but there's, and I'll be like, no, we're going for it. So that's one of the difficulties too, when there's 2 of you and not just one person either. Pros and cons, right?
Yes.
There was often times we argued about going for a bird and one of us wanted to and the other didn't. And then there's also times when it's good to
have that second
have a
set up.
second opinion to say, well, wait a minute, maybe we should be doing this. And that happened. So there was no one side, the other, but overall, I would say it balanced out. But there were always those kinds of things. It adds another element to a big year when you're doing it with a partner who isn't always on board with wanting to do or go to places. And we quickly got to the point where a couple of times I had to say to Jerry, you need to trust me because I'm the one that did all the research. He doesn't do research at all. You need to trust me when I say we need to go for this bird. You can't question me on it because I know that we need to see that bird. There's one thing that you have to make clear to people is that big years do not happen with just two people. There's a whole community. We all depend on people in the community. We depend on people first to put in eBird reports or put it on Discord. But then we depend on people who are friends or other birders to text us to let us know that things are happening. So I have done that for a few years of helping people out with big years. It's been something that I've been interested in doing. And so I really like helping you on your big year when you were doing it because it gives you a sense of feeling like you're part of that as well. A tiny part for sure.
I can thank you for a flammulated owl.
Exactly. Yeah.
I knew that there was places I could go for a flammulated owl. It was also a lifer. I wanted that bird because I didn't get it in 2012. And I would have spent 3 days. And the fact that you were 3 days ahead of me allowed me to know exactly where to go. And January 1st comes and goes. And you've done your whole, okay, let's get all these rarities. They didn't get them, but doing that on January 1st prepares you for the heartbreak and disappointment ahead.
So the Western Tanager, we went back 3 times before we actually got the bird. We did a number of trips to Ottawa to get that Western Tanager. I would say one of the birds that we probably had to try for the most times was a northern hawk owl. We made 11 attempts, 7 different locations, all hours from home. One stop was in a blizzard in conditions that were less than ideal for driving and certainly not ideal for trying to spot an owl. And we missed it over and over again. And we finally caught up with it in Ottawa. And we had been in Ottawa probably 5 or 6 times by that point. And it was just like, need to do it again. And that particular time I booked a hotel because I thought probably 2 or 3 times. We drove to the road where somebody had told us it was, and there it was. That's how easy it was.
And then you just drive back home?
Well, yeah. So we had it by 9:30, 10 o'clock, because we always leave at 4:30 in the morning to drive anywhere when we have to go through Toronto. And then we wanted to get snow goose. I think it was March. So we went and got a snow goose, and then we said there wasn't really anything else that we needed up here. Let's just drive home. There were lots of days when we would make those decisions to drive somewhere 5 hours, spend an hour for birds, and drive home 5 hours. We didn't do any overnighters. We made a deal at the beginning that we weren't going to drive anywhere through the night either. I know the young guys do that continually and sleep in their cars. I didn't sleep in my car, refused. I think like you, I want a hotel bed.
And of course, my trip to the East Coast was derailed on the way back because I'd rather spend the night in Canada.
Right.
And of course, I spent almost a week in Maine waiting to find a way home. Because you were doing shorter drives, you didn't end up too often in undrivable conditions?
Not too often. I also planned. So if there was a rarity and we wanted to go for it, I would look at weather conditions first. So there were times when I'd say, the weather's not going to be looking too good, whatever, maybe we'll go this day instead of this day. We had a couple of things that we had to work around as well. Because we were caregiving for his mom, we weren't always available to go on the spur of the moment. We certainly did for some big rarities, but for most of the places where like we've got to get up to Algonquin at some point, I look for the days when there's 3 days of good weather, so that then if there's a delay. Yeah, I'm not a very good passenger in bad driving conditions. And so I try to avoid it wherever possible. We really lucked out. We didn't have any car problems. I mean, we had a flat tire once, and that happened to happen in his mom's condo. It really did work out extremely well. It was a lot of fun.
What was the longest drive you did for a single bird?
We went up to Cochrane, the Willow Ptarmigan. So the drive to Cochrane, it's 9, 10
There's a bird
or something like that. And then you drive 170 kilometers up the ice road to where the ptarmigan.
I've heard of the ice road.
Yeah. And so it's funny because I heard ice road, and in my mind, I was picturing, in Northern Ontario, I'm picturing those old logging roads.
Yes.
Jerry used to take me on searching for property in the middle of nowhere. And so we had our car loaded with all these survival supplies in case we got lost or something like that. And then when we actually got to the road, it's like this wide highway because all these big trucks from the mine go up and down it. There was hardly any snow. The road was still ice and snow. But when we were out of our car birding, anybody that drove by stopped and said, "Are you okay?" There was trucks back and forth. There's no cell service on there. So that made me nervous as well. But it was all good. And it was a really fantastic experience. I would say seeing that willow ptarmigan was one of my top experiences of the year.
Especially for where you had to go.
Yeah, and had to travel that far. It was probably the furthest that we had to go.
And the other thing was in 2022, the bird that I had seen almost every year in the last 5 years was the swallowtail kite. So you would have got the swallowtail kite in 2024? Or?
We did not get it for our Ontario year. And we've gotten swallowtail kite most years because we're at Peely a fair bit. I think the first time that I saw one at Peely, and it wasn't a lifer bird for me because I'd seen them in Florida, but I was at the tip on the beach and it flew right over my head. Spectacular views. And last year, there were 35 reports of swallowtail kites in May around Lake Erie, and we did not see it. That was one of the disappointing chases for us because we were at Peely. It was noted, it was back and forth along sort of Long Point. Then it was posted at Rondo. And so we decided that we would drive to Rondo. As we were driving to Rondo, the report came in that it was on its way down the coastline of Lake Erie towards Peely. And so we were trying to find places to kind of go in and check for it. I think there was a couple of people that got it somewhere else along there. And so we ended up pulling in near Peely, like the soccer fields kind of thing area, got out of our car, scanning, looking high, trying to see it, didn't get it. We then drove down to the main road that goes down into the Peely Park. At that point, I wasn't thinking it was going to get into the park, that it was maybe going north a little bit. So we hung out near Peely Wings, the store there, and set up a scope and looked and looked and looked, and it never came past. And after that, there were no more sightings of it.
What was December like when you were really trying to chase as many things to get to your goal?
We hit 300 just before June.
Quite early.
Yeah, we were quite early hitting the 300 mark. And I knew going in that we would probably hit 300. I had my plan. I could see that if we got all the common species and everything else, you need about 10 or so rarities or whatever to hit your 300. And so we went up to Rainy River. And in my mind anyway, Robert, I mean, to be honest, I told Jerry that we were going for 300, but I always knew that I was going to go as far over 300 as I could.
I think you secretly once told me it was 330.
Yeah. First, I really 320 because I really didn't think 330 was possible. But 320 definitely I wanted to hit. I think we hit 320, I'm going to say it was in September, maybe. 300 was Acadian flycatcher. So that was the end of May. And we hit 320 was our cinnamon teal, which was in Grimsby.
Oh, yes. That was a big Ontario lifer for a lot of people.
It was nice. By the time the fall hits, you've got a few fall species that you're chasing, your Jaeger and your Nelson sparrows. So there's only a few common birds, expected birds. You're really only just rarities.
Yeah.
So from that point on, you're just every day waiting for the ding of discord, you know, of something super, super good.
That's the season where you hang out and you do your lake watching, which is my least favorite thing to do.
Mine too.
But there were times where, especially during a big year, you just have to stand there and freeze and find birds.
Exactly. And one of the things I wanted to happen during a big year was to get to be a better birder. And so part of that was putting in the time for lake watches. In the past, we show up at Van Wagner's when there's 30 or 40 people on one of those days when the winds are good, and somebody tells you that's a palm Jaeger out there, or a parasitic Jaeger, and you're looking in your scope and you can find the same bird that they're on, but it's so far out that you have no idea, really. You have to believe that those people are giving you the right answer, right? Okay, it really is that I'm putting on my list. So at least this year, I spent so many hours on Lake Watch, and we were lucky enough to have the birds come close enough that I could see them truly and properly see them and get pictures of them and look at them and be, oh, okay, that is a parasitic or that's a long-tailed. So I really made a lot of gains in that, where now in my scope, I can actually say that's a Jaeger. I'm actually seeing one.
It took me a long time.
I don't know if I would be comfortable enough if I was by myself looking at Jaegers to be able to say one or the other, but I at least know that I can identify that it's a Jaeger, and based on dates and things like that, and if Jerry got a picture, then I think we'd be able to figure it out now. Whereas before, in every other year, it's just been somebody else saying to me, that was this, that was that. I think we made a lot of inroads in learning and becoming better birders. Also, I spent many, many hours looking through thousands of ducks, thousands of redheads looking for a Eurasian widgeon, hundreds and hundreds of gulls looking for something different, Franklin's gull. So all of those kinds of things have allowed us to be better birders, for sure.
So what did you end up with for your Ontario big year?
335.
Which is more than you even would have imagined. What was the last bird of the year?
Gray-crowned rosy finch.
And where was that?
That was up near Kirtland Lake, so north. And so it showed up December 27th. We were at 334. I figured that was it. I had already sort of written my final blog. I had included gray-crowned rosy finch in my misses. So we decided that we would do one last chase. We were trying to decide how we were going to start our Canada big year. So we kind of had thought about, should we start up north or should we start somewhere else? And I was kind of waiting to see what rarities were around that we could go for Canada. So when the gray-crowned rosy finch came up, I said, hey, you know what? Let's go up and spend New Year's up there and get it for both years. And gray-crowned rosy finch is fairly easy to get out in BC in the summer. So it's not something that I was worried about, but one bird off the list, why not?
Now you're up in the north and you're getting this
335.
Did you feel like
it was a good moment?
Tremendous moment.
Yeah, it was a really good moment for us because I really didn't think that I was going to do it. And 335 to me was way more than I had anticipated. But always in the back of your mind are the birds that you could have done. You know, now in hindsight, of course, with a little bit more of a push, I could have hit 340. And there's always the could have. There's always those kinds of things that you're going to learn from things. Again, the caregiving as the year progressed, the fall and winter, it was becoming a daily thing so that we had less and less opportunity to go. And it was really a stressful time for us because it was overwhelming. So we were not into the birding as much because that was kind of hanging over our heads. And really, into December, I really didn't think we were going to be able to do Canada because I felt that his mom was going to need so much care. But as it turned out, she went into hospital and we were told that she had to go into care. So she's in a facility now, which meant that we do have that freedom now to a certain extent to do Canada.
And how does that play out?
We knew going in that if something happened, we might not be able to finish our years. So to be honest, it worked out at the time for the fall. We thought, oh my gosh, we're not going to be able to finish birding. But we managed to get to the rarities that we needed to get and got that done. And she went into hospital. So she was taken care. That allowed us to go for that gray-crowned rosy finch. We probably wouldn't have done it if she was still at home. Because by that point, we were having to go there every day. So it kind of worked out. And then when they said to put her in care, we found a care place within a week or two, which is almost unheard of right now. And it's been an adjustment for her to go in there, but it's given us this sense that we can go off. We're going to be away for the summer out in BC. We know that she's well taken care of. And we recognize, and Jerry recognizes, even though it is his mom, that he has to have his life. We don't know how long anybody has in this world. And we're determined to enjoy it. And that has been our stress release, is going out and birding. When we're out there, we don't think about anything. And you're focused on birding and everything else goes away.
So many people have found birding is the thing because you're focused, especially you're outside. Instead of just walking, you're listening and you're seeing. I don't know who said it, but the expression was, they look, but they do not see.
Right.
And there's an advantage to couple.
There's an advantage to that too, is because you're two people in the car as well. And so one is looking for birds and one is driving. Whereas if you're doing it on your own, you're missing probably tons of stuff because you're paying attention to the road. Or you hope that you're paying attention to the road.
Well, I always joke with Sue that all the skid marks on the farm roads are birders stopping for a bird.
For sure. And even helping with the driving.
Yeah.
I mean, we drove almost 50,000 kilometers, which I think seems to be the amount that everybody does when they do in Ontario. They do over 50,000 kilometers. I don't think you can do a year without doing that kind of driving. And we did just under that. Jerry did the vast majority of that. I would drive when I could, but but Jerry isn't as literate on the phone as I am. So I would say, well, just check Discord and just see, and it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So I get frustrated and pull over anyway to look. So kind of defeats the purpose a little bit.
The very last thing I want to ask you is, because you're a couple, and couples spending a gazillion hours together can sometimes lead to issues. It was very difficult when I stopped traveling and working, when I was home all the time.
Right.
Yes, we can go away on a vacation for 10 days, but Sue's sort of glad I do all this birding because I am out of the house. She thought I was crazy for doing the Canada Big Year, but we had spent since 2020 with COVID.
She was ready for you to leave the house.
So yeah, we had never spent so much time together.
Right.
There's contentious issues.
I guess maybe we just are lucky to a certain extent. Jerry worked from home a lot of years, and I homeschooled our kids. So the four of us were in our house in Burlington for quite a few years, together a lot of the time. And then when we built our house out here in Glen Morris, we were together and he worked from home. So he was there. Technically, he was working, but he was home all the time. Kind of used to being together. We're both concentrating on birding, so there's usually not issues. The issues come when we're not finding the birds. So generally when we're traveling, there's a meltdown or something. It's usually me. I usually have to, I'll admit. And there's lots of passenger driving. He's driving too slow, or he's not driving fast enough, or he's taking the long route or whatever. We have snippy times. And we have little arguments and little spats. For the most part, I'm a peacekeeper, so I probably tend to go along. So often, and I point this out to Jerry oftentimes, is that we'll be out birding and he'll say, where do you think we should go? And I'll say, what do you think? And he says, well, I think we should go over here. And I say, okay. Now, if the reverse happens and I say, well, I think we should go over there. And he'll say, I don't know why you want to go over there. I think we should go over there. And I'd be like, why did you ask me? And here's the thing of it is, oftentimes when Jerry chooses that path, there's something good. And so I tease him a lot about being my finder of birds. So if somebody says the bird is here and they send me a pin, I go to that pin and I stand there. I want the bird to be at that pin. And Jerry will go to that pin and he will immediately walk away from it. So many times he has walked away from that pin and found the bird. I feel like there's a nice balance there. And in fact, with the black-throated gray warbler, when we were out there was a number of people that day not being seen. And Barb Charlton was there. And we were joking around because Jerry kept wandering away. Everybody was like, this is the corner where it's been seen. Jerry kept wandering away. And I was like, I can't talk to you guys. I got to go over where Jerry is, because I was determined that I was going to shadow him and not let him go anywhere, because I figured he would see it and I would not see it. And it worked out. I'm pleased to say that for the Ontario Big Year, we saw the same number of birds. And indeed, each of us saw the 335. There wasn't anything where we didn't, which is unusual. I really was surprised that there wasn't a rarity somewhere along the line that one of us would have not got on fast enough, but it worked out. So that's good. We'll see what happens with Canada.
Yes.
It's a crazy hobby for sure.
We will be back another time for that. Maybe Jerry will join us. Maybe. That conversation, I think, more fun with the spouses, because they have different stories to tell.
For sure.
And that concludes part 1 of the 3-year Big Year adventures of Ellen and Jerry. I met Jerry on January 1st, 2021 in their front yard in Glen Morris, Ontario. I had just moved to Brant County and figured the best way to learn my new patch was to do a Brant County Big Year. I was standing at the edge of their property watching evening grosbeaks at their feeders. It was a great bird for the county to start my big year. Jerry came out and we had a nice conversation that morning, and as the year went on, Sue and I kept running into Ellen and Jerry anytime we were chasing Brant County rarities. Over the years, we have become good friends, along with a number of other local birders. I don't have many friends and I'm not very much into socializing, but hanging out with birders is as close to therapy and friendship as one can get. This podcast helps too, and for that, I am grateful. I hope everyone has a great winter of birding, especially the winter listers. I'll be back in 2026 with Ellen and perhaps Jerry to look back on their Canada Big Year. But the first episode of Season 4 will be a sequel of sorts to my talk with Andrew Keaveney and his 2012 Ontario Big Year. He was in competition with another young birder, Josh Vandermeulen. You've heard from Andrew, but next season you'll get to hear the rest of the story. And remember, as you go about your birdie business, only real birders pish in the woods.